Welcome back to the Brennan T. Adams Show. I am Brennan T. Adams, and today we have a guest on who I met, first time I met in his house, and we did a car ride together at his event called Zoic. Connected with him, we ended up doing a partnership together, doing a book deal, and then also I got him to fly to Iowa to speak at my event called Young Entrepreneur Convention. We have a mutual connection mentor I'll talk about later who is Cactus Jack Behringer, did infomercials for many years. And I gotta say, so this guy is known for being the original shark on Shark Tank, inventing the infomercial, taking 20 companies to over 100 million. But this is what I love about the guy. We've got to travel the country together, be in planes together, car rides, have some fun together. He's just a fun guy, and he's always open to learning and seeing what could happen next. And today I'm excited to dive into what he's looking for in business, investing in businesses, and even in the video marketing side. So please help me welcome my really good friend, mentor, and business partner, Kevin Harrington. Yeah, how you doing, buddy? There you go. Take a seat. Kevin, so many ways I can go with this, but I want to start with, what are you most excited about today? Today and where you're at, what are you most excited about, whether business or life?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm excited about the fact that I've got a business now that is bringing way more opportunities to me than I can even begin to start diving into. So that's a cool thing. I mean, if you only look at two deals and you have to decide, okay, I got to make an investment in one of these two deals. Neither one of them may have any big upside, and you may not get your money back or make it work. But if you've got dozens or hundreds or thousands or whatever of opportunities, and you can analyze them the right way, and then now you have an opportunity to get in on better opportunities, I think. So I put a team together, and you know my son Brian, he's a big part of my team. So that's what excites me now also. Pretty much the most is that I've been doing all this entrepreneurship stuff pretty much on my own. I have a brother that's 9 years younger than me that got involved with me for a few years, Tim. Yep. And Tim was great, and he went off to do his own things. But I have two boys, one's 33 and one's 23, and I see the vision of them really taking things on in the future. And so I see what I'm doing now is really building the future for my kids.
I love that. I mean, I've worked closely, pretty much every day with Brian and know Nick as well. What's been the toughest thing as a father to see just giving lessons for your sons going through entrepreneurship?
So Brian, he's 33 years old, I mentioned. He graduated from Penn State, so he's got a great education. He had honors, business and finance. But when he first came into the business, he didn't want to work. I mean, he thought he was coming in just to kind of, my dad's done all of this, and I'm his son. And people would come back to me and say, okay, Brian's reporting to somebody, right, in the company, and they're like, this kid doesn't want to work. I mean, what's his problem? So I'm like, wow, I don't understand. I mean, I was always doing deals and building businesses. In high school, I had a driveway sealing business, and I'll tell some of the story in a little bit. I'm going to be speaking, but I'm like, I don't understand. He wanted to make money. He wanted cars. He wanted watches. But he didn't want to work. So I had to have a come to Jesus with Brian and make him understand that, look, if you're going to be part of my team, you've got to be like me. You've got to roll up the sleeves and be ready to go. And so for however it happened, I don't know, but he's one of the hardest working guys I know now. So, I mean, he can multitask and oversee dozens of different things on a daily basis. And so I think it was just him understanding what he needed to do and what I expected from him. He had the potential. So once he realized that and started executing, I think initially he was afraid. And he was afraid to take on risk, to take on challenges, because he was afraid maybe to fail. And once, because I'll never forget the very first deal that he got really excited about, a product that we had put a bunch of money into, completely failed. And he was like devastated. He's like, I don't understand. He said months of his life and hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment, and it failed. It was done. It was over. We lost our money. And he's like, well, I thought this was a business that everything went the other way, right? And I'm like, no, this is part of being an entrepreneur is failure. And I had early on, I had some of the same issues of failing. And so the good news is I had hit on a couple of projects early on too. So I knew that, yes, that things can work. And when they do, it can be unbelievable. So failure is part of the process. Yeah. And I failed 500 plus times with the investments that I've made. 500 deals that I've invested in that failed, that I'd lost my money. But I keep going back. Why? Because 300 of them, I made 800 deals. Yeah. 300 of them did okay. And a few of those went to the moon. To the moon, billions. And so, yeah, I mean, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. But Brian, my son, it came full circle. I'm still working on my youngest, as you know, okay? Yeah. Nikki, 23. Like Nikki, yeah. Nikki is 23 and is still trying to figure out what he wants.
I was at 23 too.
Right.
So I want to say one thing, and I'm going to ask a question. I remember Brian told me, I don't know where it got brought up, but he said how he learned from you, and he said, Dad, I want a new phone. And you said, you can have it, Brian. You're going to go work and get the money and go buy it yourself. And that was a pivotal moment for him, he says, because I realized I had to go get it. I had to do it myself, working for it. So the next question is, so you've had failures, you've had successes. Obviously earlier, Sam and I talked about some big obstacles, and honestly, every mentor I have has had extreme obstacles in business. What's one that comes to mind to you was like one of the biggest failures or hardest times in your career? Yep. And what did you do to go get through that? Well,
this was really tough because I had this is back in the early 90s. I had a business. We were doing $50 million a year, $1 million a week in sales, and we were profitable. But we didn't have cash. I started that company with $25,000, bootstrapped it from $25,000 in cash to $50 million in sales with no outside financing. And so in a couple of years. Yeah. And so, but we were so thinly capitalized that one little hiccup could cause some problems. And so we had a couple little hiccups in the business. We were I was selling products as seen on TV. And so I was a trusting guy dealing with factories that, hey, they're a factory. They know how to make product. I'll sell them. I'll buy them from a great factory. Well, we were getting, one of our products was, we average, in the world of returns, if you're in the business of selling products direct to the consumer, you have to deal with returns. We averaged about 10%. So for every 10,000 pieces of something we sold, we'd take back 1,000, give them their money back, no problem. Well, we had an item that was coming in at a 30% return because it was defective. The product was made terribly. The quality assurance was not there. And so now let's do 10 million in sales and budget $1 million in return, but now all of a sudden it's going to be millions more. Wow. Where does that come from? Okay. I mean, where does it come from? It put us in a real crunch. And so what happened is the bank actually called us one day, and we were processing this $1 million a week. Well, they grabbed that plus they grabbed $2 million out of our bank account, which was absolutely every dime we had. They left us with $100,000 to run our business. But that $2 million was my operating capital. They grabbed it as a security against the high returns that the company was experiencing. So I had $500,000 sitting in the bank account against returns. They wanted $2.5 million. So they had in the contract, they were allowed to, as I processed my money, instead of sending it to me, grab it. $2 million gone from my bank account. And so we had a big come to Jesus situation there. And I sat with, and it's sort of the golden rule. They possessed it, they had a legal right to do it, which was also another error on my part. How do I sign an agreement that allows a bank to grab $2 million out of my account whenever they want? Well, because I was a young entrepreneur, and pretty much that's what you had to do to get a credit card processor. I mean, credit card processing is not easy today because of a lot of these kind of things that were happening back in the day. And by the way, the bank never lost any money because we were able to keep rolling, but we ended up actually having to, at this particular point, we filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in order to get the money back and to take control of the company back. Because now the control of the company was now with this bank that had all my cash. And so we filed and got all of our money back because the judge said, how dare you take $2 million from this company that's a startup company. It's, startup, they're couple of years old. And they gave us back 80% of it in order to be able to operate our business. So these are, but filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy was not a lot of fun. We're doing $50 million a year profitable in bankruptcy. The judge couldn't believe it. And so we put a plan together, came out of bankruptcy in 60 days, because we had a great business. We were selling. We had to get back up and running quickly because we were shut down for, a couple of weeks only, not months, not years. And we just got right back up and dealt with it. And what I ended up doing in that process, I realized I needed capital. I wasn't the greatest guy at raising capital. So gets back to something that Jeff said earlier. Getting the right people around you is the most important thing you can do. And I had not been sophisticated enough in that area yet, but I was learning it at this time. So, I ended up coming out of this. So I said to myself, okay, we're in Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and this is back in 1991. So it's 30 years ago, right?
I was 2. That was a long time. I was 2 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So I said, you know what? I've got a great idea. I sold the company in bankruptcy to a public company for stock, because I said this public company had lines of credit. They had all, boom, 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 and I went in and did this deal. I got millions of shares.
They sold it for stock.
Yeah. So I got millions of shares of stock in this public company. They were a small company, but it was public and they had lines of credit. And the stock was trading at $1 a share, their stock. So I got some cash, it was not tens of millions, but it wasn't, millions of dollars in cash up front. Plus I got millions of shares of stock at $1 a share. Well, as the company grew and we came out of bankruptcy, the stock went to over $20 a share. So that's how we came out of bankruptcy, was just supercharging the public company that I merged with, and I took control of that, and I became the second largest shareholder of that public company, and we watched the stock go from $1 to $5 to $10 to $15 to $20, and it was a great.
That's a good turnaround story.
It was a great, and that happened in about 3 years. After the original filing of Chapter 11.
That's amazing. Okay, next question I have for you is, what trends you see? Okay, it's 2021 going to 2022. For companies to invest in, or just different trends you see for opportunity right now, because you're getting pitched every day. We're seeing different deals. Where do you see the trend of everything going? Where do you think the best investment opportunities will be?
Well, so over the years, I've made a lot of investments in a lot of private companies, and those are the toughest deals because how do you get your money out is one of the challenges when you invest into a private company, right? Yeah. Especially if you are a minority shareholder in a private company, it's a whole different situation. I've had a lot of private companies that I controlled, but I could do what I wanted.
Yeah.
If I own 10%, this was the Shark Tank model. I want $1 million for 10% of my company, right? Yeah. Well, I did dozens of deals like that, and not $1 million, but there were people wanting $1 million for 10% of their company. But I ended up, here for $500,000. I wrote a check for $500,000. I owned a percentage, a minority stake in a private company. Well, I had no really say so, and 6 months later, that person closed the doors down and said, hey, not only did you lose your 500, but I got 38,000 in unpaid legal bills and invoices also that you can take care of for me in addition to that. So owning shares and equities in private companies was tougher. So I've shifted gears a little bit. I love getting involved in public companies. Today, there's this how many have heard the term SPAC, S-P-A-C, Special Purpose Access Corp, right? So they call them SPACs today. I've been doing SPACs for dozens of years because, taking over a public company, merging assets into it, et cetera, et cetera. I did that when I bought AsSeenOnTV.com. I took over a public company, merged it in, raised some capital. We raised $30 million around it, and it became a pubco. And so, that was that. Today they call that a SPAC. Back then it was called a blind pool, taking a public company and merging some assets into it. But I love public companies, and I'm involved with probably about a dozen pubcos in one form or another, sitting on a board, advisory board, some formal relationships.
Let's talk. So we're both involved with one called Hollister. You briefly talked about it before, cannabis company. Talk about Hollister, but then talk about just kind of the key components of when a team comes in to take a stock that is totally undervalued and takes it, well, kind of like what you did with Celsius.
Right.
Can you just talk about example there, what some things strategy-wise?
Yeah. So, I'm going to tell a little bit of the Celsius story when I speak, but this company was an energy drink company, and they were trading on a multiple, because pubcos trade on a multiple. So they were trading on a multiple of about 5 times their top line, and that was decent and giving them some good value. But we were able, when COVID hit, and we changed the direction of the company by going after. We went direct to the consumer after fitness Instagram influencers. We got thousands of them going to go direct to the consumer, pushing Amazon, pushing. And so here was a company that was in the business of selling to retail stores. Yeah, Celsius is in Walmart and Target and CVS and 180,000 retail stores right now. But it started in just a few stores, but we were also controlling the direct-to-the-consumer experience with Instagram influencers, and our Amazon business went from 0 to $50-60 million a year. Yeah. And then the market realized, wait a minute, this is a different company than just the old model of selling to the stores. They actually control their destiny with direct-to-the-consumer. We're trading on a 20 multiple of top line now. And so as we repositioned the company and went out, we were able to convince the market that we were a different company than they thought. So the bottom line is at a 20x multiple, the stock just supercharged.
22 cents to $6 billion is what, or 22 cents to $96 is what Celsius went to, right?
Yeah. Wow. So it's 22 cents. It was a couple $1 million company. It's a $7 billion company now. Yeah.
Wow.
So from 22 cents a share to $96, it topped over 100 at one point. But and that was based on changing the multiple of the business.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to open up to questions here. Kevin, by the way, he's going to be speaking here in a little bit. He's giving a keynote. I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. But questions for Kevin Harrington? Raise your hand. Get a mic for Jay. Jay's a podcast host, so he always has good questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Kevin, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here. So I'm curious, can you talk for a moment about protecting the downside? And also, has there been a situation where you've assessed a business opportunity that looked good, smelled good, seemed like there was upward mobility and opportunity there, but you walked? And if so, why? What was the deciding factor, and what lessons did you learn from that?
So one that I walked from?
Yeah, where everything looked good, felt good, you were assessing it, doing your due diligence, but before you pulled the trigger, you made the decision to walk from it for whatever reason. And if you haven't experienced that, that's fine. But if you have, I'm curious why you walked and what you learned from that experience.
Yeah. I've got to think about the one that I walked on. What was it? The first one?
The first question was around protecting your downside.
Right. So on protecting the downside, as an investor, a lot of times I don't want to just write all the check up front. So, because people say, oh, well, we need $10 million. Well, you don't need it all right now, right? So what do you need? So let's look at the deployment of cash and when you need it. And because I have seen situations, and I was involved in a public company once, where when 10 million came in from a raise, the people just went crazy, and they ordered $5 million worth of inventory right on the opening tranche, and $4 million of that ended up unsaleable and never got their money back because they just got fat and rich from this money raise, right? And it just gave them a whole different, they didn't know how to handle having $10 million in cash. You give $10 million to the wrong people, they'll blow through it. So that's an important thing. So I like to see the benchmarks, right? And many banks do this too. If we're going to lend money, you have to stay in certain ratios in terms of sales to debt and things like that. And so as an investor, I want to know, okay, let's say I like to fund. I don't like to just put money into general operating funds. I like for money to be earmarked for growth, for marketing, for digital, so in other words, the easiest money to raise, in my opinion, is if you have a product and you're running on Facebook and Instagram and all the different social media channels, and you're showing a good return on and I'll use the term CAC, customer acquisition cost. This is a term I've been using for 40 years. If your CAC is reasonable, and you have a customer, and you can acquire customers at the right price based on your average order value, then money is just going to grow this business tremendously as long as you're staying within the realm of the CAC that's agreed to. So, take the Tony Little ab isolator as an example. When we first did that show, this was a product that was selling for about $40. We had a CAC of about $15. The product cost us about $5. We had a 50%, close to 50% gross margin. And then we had shipping and handling and customer service and returns and all the other costs. And then we had our profit. But we were able to generate $350 million in sales on that product, staying to a $15 CAC for 18 months. So, now we financed it ourselves, but if I had brought an investor in, me as an investor, I will finance that, that customer acquisition as long as it's happening. But again, you got to keep the ratios have to work and have to stay in place. So that's an important thing. I have to give some thought to one because
I'm curious here too.
I've walked from quite a few deals, but I can't think of one. There's always stories of, hey, the guy that did the Ring doorbell went on Shark Tank and didn't get a deal, but then he sold his company for $1 billion. Well, so there's all those kinds of things that you hear about, but that it wasn't actually the same Ring that it was that he sold eventually. But before I get out of here today, I'll give you one, but I off the top of my head, I actually can't think of one that I walked from that, went. I don't know if you're looking for one that went on to the moon or some story like that, but I'll work on that for you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And just to clarify my question, maybe I didn't state it or articulate it the way that I should have. It doesn't have to necessarily be one that you walked from that ended up being a moonshot.
Yeah.
I'm curious to find out those that you assessed and it looked great, right? All the signs were there, but for some reason you said, I'm not taking it. That's the one I'm curious about.
So I just thought, I mentioned Tony Little. We were doing Tony Little fitness products. And Tony, he lives locally here, and he got to the point where there were months, his royalty check was over $1 million a month. because we were, $300 and some million in sales, right? He was just getting, and it just unbelievable success. So he'd come into the office to pick up his check because, it was a big check, right? And so one day, one of the guys working there, his name was Carl Deichler. And Carl, look, Tony had been in a car accident and he'd gained 40 pounds and he was lethargic and slow. And for those that don't know Tony, he's a little different in person than he is on TV. And TV's all full of energy. And when you get him in person, he's shy and quiet and kind of sits in the back of the room. But he came in, he was slow and he was talking like this. And Carl's like, Tony, what's wrong? He said, you gained weight, look so good. He said, I had an accident. He said, where's your beach body? And that's when, we're all looking around and Carl said, he says, beach body. So Carl said, hey, I'm going to do my own product. I'm going to be an entrepreneur, Kevin. And he did Beachbody, offered me a deal to own half of it. It's a 2-point-something billion company right now. So, Beachbody, Carl Deichler. In fact, they just went public with a SPAC.
They did, yeah.
And their stock is, it's actually having some issues in the market, but it's still about a $2 billion company that I passed on. So, having the idea is one thing. Executing it, it's all about execution. I mean, Carl Deichler loves to tell the story where his first infomercial failed 17 times. And he kept redoing it. And this is back to, recording video, right?
Yeah.
He went back, he hired focus groups, he hired this, because each time he tweaked it, he improved the performance of it until he had a rollout, and then they did hundreds of millions of dollars with something that failed 17 times. So, I didn't get in on the ground floor. It would have taken a lot of doing there, but Beachbody has been an amazing success, and I don't know why I didn't think of that one before, but that's a good one.
One
Thank
more
you.
question. Who's got a question for Kevin? Anybody else? Question?
There's one back there. Back there?
Back there? I can't. Oh, Ralph. Yes, you just saw Kevin. Yes. I'm sure you got questions for Dick.
That story is awesome about Beachbody, by the way. I never heard that before, but that's a good example of not it's not always easy. You speak a lot in your book about blue ocean and red ocean.
About what?
About blue ocean and red ocean. About trying to find a blue ocean. I mean, what blue oceans are you looking at right now? I know cannabis is obviously one of them, but what other industries are you looking at right now that you see a lot of opportunity and not a lot of competition?
I mean, cannabis is a great opportunity, I believe, and we talked about the reasons why. I think it's going to get legalized, and those that are in on the ground floor are going to see a big increases in valuations as the big money comes in. So that's a good one for me. Also, cybersecurity. I was in Las Vegas last night at a board meeting at the MGM and presenting. I actually left there at 9 o'clock last night, okay? Las Vegas. So I went out on Monday and came back last night so I could be here today. But cybersecurity, we have a public company in cybersecurity now, and we're rolling up smaller security companies, cyber companies. So this is, again, kind of getting back to my passion now, pubcos, roll-ups, et cetera. So cybersecurity is good. My son continues to scream at me about doing more crypto, okay? And so he finally said, when Bitcoin was 40,000 a few weeks ago, he's like, Dad, I'm telling you right now, this is the time you need to go heavy. I do crypto, but not huge percentages of my portfolio. And so since he told me this it went from 40,000 to over, I think it's 66 right today. I'm like, I did go a little bit, but I still didn't go all in like he wanted me to. But I think, and I was watching CNBC this morning, and there's these crypto guys on there just saying that you got to take a percentage of your portfolio and roll it in there. So crypto, cyber, cannabis, and I am always, and have been for 40 years, a product guy. So I still love gadgets. I still love, I had a guy sat in my office just last Friday morning with a pet product that takes the fur right off of dogs, collects it. It's patented. It's got all this great intellectual property, and it's going to be a mind-blowing product in the world of pets. So I love products, and I will continue to always be a product guy too.
Okay, my last question, Enda, is what does success mean to you? You were part of the journey with us for success in your city. What does success mean to you, Kevin?
I think success is, I've been able to be successful. I'm motivated and have been there and done that. But I love being able to teach other people how to be successful, and it starts with my kids. I feel very good with Brian at this point. So I believe, I think I've said it this way. I spent the first 30 years of my life trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I got into the as seen in TV infomercial space. I was in my late 20s, and then I spent the next 30 some years just doing projects and product after product. Hundreds of products, 800 plus products, failing on more than I'm succeeding on, but doing billions of dollars in sales and having public companies. And so that takes me through to my last 30 years, which is now, I'm in that. I had my 65th birthday last week. And so my last 30 years, I'm focused on helping entrepreneurs grow and be successful, mentoring them, coaching, advising. But it also starts right at home with my boys, my family. I want them to be successful, and I want them to carry the tradition on of what we've been doing for the last 40 years.
I love it. Let's give him a round of applause.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
All
Good
right.
job.
Thank you.